Hi, I'm Phil Bumper from APEC Virtual Selling, where we help companies sell more SaaS by leveraging modern virtual selling strategies. In this video, we'll discuss how to determine the best market for your international expansion. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe and enable notifications for this channel. And regardless of where you're watching, please make sure to like the video and leave a comment. This will help us develop more of this kind of content. International expansion definitely is a fairly complex topic. And what I'm hoping to achieve in today's video is give a general framework of how to think about it, how to approach it, as well as give a bunch of practical tips on how to do it, how to determine those best markets to expand your SaaS business to. Now, I'll be speaking in this video from my own experience, primarily in the Asia Pacific part of the world, but based on experience I've had in other parts of the world, I believe the frameworks and the tips that I'm going to share today apply to other regions as well. So the general approach in this video is to look at the low-hanging fruit, look at how this expansion to a new market can be executed easily and quickly, how I can perhaps just dip my toe into the new market so that it can be done relatively quickly with this small bet approach, as opposed to doing very, very, very lengthy research and potentially investing a lot of resources in it. So the first way to do it, most obvious one, is to look at where you already have customers. So you might not be focused on a particular market. Let's say you're selling primarily in the US, but you might have some opportunistic customers in a particular country or countries that have found you, came to you, proving that there is a demand for your software in that particular market that actually eventuated in a sale for you, in revenue for you in that country. Now, the thing to think about here is that these could be both direct customers, so customers who actually sign your contract in that particular country. Let's say customers that signed your contract in mainland China, you have a contract with them, with their Chinese entity. However, one interesting thing to think about as well is to look at countries where you might not have a contract, you might not have a direct customer, so to speak, but they are using your software. So an example would be a company that does supply chain software. They might have a customer in the US, but they have operations, and oftentimes significant operations, in countries like mainland China or Southeast Asia, where that software is used and works very well. So that's the first thing to think about. So the next thing to look at is look at the international demand or demand in other markets for your software. So have a look at where some leads and opportunities developed outside of your main market. So again, let's say you're primarily selling in the US. What were the countries where you have had inbound leads, where you have had opportunities? Now, the thing here is to also look at if these opportunities didn't eventuate, what was the reason, right? Because just purely on that demand, if you have the demand but opportunities went nowhere, could be because your product is actually not suitable for that particular market. So look at that demand, but try to critically think about if opportunities did eventuate, why they didn't eventuate. Again, could be because it's not a fit, but also could be because you didn't really put resources into those sales cycles. Right, so far we've been talking about looking at your direct sales, but one important thing also would be to look at your channel partners. So perhaps what you could do is try to have a chat with a channel partner that you trust, that possibly is a global player. Perhaps look at somebody senior in that organization and ask them that question as to which markets they believe your products could potentially be suitable in. Sometimes that might be tricky. So what you can also do is, if you have some sort of insight into which markets you could potentially expand into based on, for instance, some of the previous things I talked about, what you could do is talk to your channel partners and have them make some introductions to their local people in those markets, or to their sister companies, so to speak, to some companies, some partners they know they might work with in those markets, and have those conversations to determine whether your product is potentially suitable for their markets and whether these partners would be interested in working with you and selling your software in their particular market. I think that desire, being able to determine and measure that desire to work with you and sell your software, is potentially a very telling clue as to whether your software might be successful in that market. Now, it's probably important here to not only look at just one partner in a particular market, as again, working with channel partners, you know that they might have different priorities and different ways of how they do things. If you have the time resources, I would advise speaking with a couple of channel partners in a particular market. The other thing to look at is look at your direct competition and see where they were successful expanding to. Now, the key thing here is the word successful. So just because your competitor might expand to a particular new location, that doesn't necessarily mean a lot. As we all know, a lot of SaaS companies, they can throw a lot of resources, burn a lot of money trying to expand and not go anywhere. I know of some companies that over the course of half a decade or so would open an office in a particular country just to shut it down after 1 year because it doesn't produce results, and then a year and a half later try to do it again. And this is also why at the beginning of the video I talked about it's probably smart to do those small bets, leverage virtual selling, do the expansion that way first. But if you can look at competitors and see where they were successful in a new market and they're their competitors, chances are you might be able to successfully expand to that market as well. Yet another thing to explore would be to look at additional markets that are similar to your main market in a way that's relevant to your SaaS solution. So what I mean by that, for instance, let's say your main market is the UK and your SaaS software is in the legal space and is built around the UK legal system. Well, chances are a place like Australia, certain aspects of the legal system of that framework can be quite similar to the UK. So that might be a very strong natural fit for your SaaS software. So the last tip in this video is to look at resources that you already have that might be helpful with a particular market. So specifically here, I'm talking about human resources. So let's say you have somebody in your organization in the US who is in a revenue generating role that is Indonesian. They have some connections in Indonesia, and they know some partners perhaps, they can speak the language. You can do a fun side project with them to try to determine with very limited resources whether your product could be a fit in Indonesia and whether there's any interest or any demand. I hope these tips were helpful. If you think that there is something that I missed that is a low-hanging fruit as well, some additional tips, definitely do let us know, leave a comment. If you have any other feedback, leave a comment as well. And if international expansion is something you would like help with, definitely get in touch with us.